So Paul the Apostle, he starts off Philippians chapter 4 with a great word, therefore. And of course, whenever you see a therefore, you have to look at what is that therefore. And so you go back a few verses and you find out, man, we have this glorious future ahead of us. We have Christ, who is the Lord of the universe, who's going to return for us. He's going to change our lowly bodies into something pretty glorious, resurrection bodies like him. Because we have this glorious future, because, all of these things and more, he says, therefore, I urge you to stand firm. Now, when I think of standing firm, I'm thinking of like, in a T stance, a fighter, standing firm. Whenever you have to stand firm against something, that means there's something to stand firm against. For us, it's the world, the flesh, and the devil. And we fight those things differently, but we got to stand firm on our rock, which is Jesus, planted in him, standing firm, because we're going to have things battering against us. And then he goes on, he talks about, here's how you do it. You've got to rejoice in the Lord. And again, I say rejoice, and we've already talked about that. He says, get along together. He urges these two ladies to just get along in the Lord. Like, don't let the wedges of this world drive in between you two. Don't let the enemy put these little wedges in between you two. There's always a greater purpose in mind. I always think there's a greater kingdom at stake. Like, it's not just about you, and you don't have to have an opinion on everything and all of those things. And then let me read what he says to you. He goes, it's one of my favorite verses, Philippians 4:6. He says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, let your requests be made known to God through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. And the peace of Christ, which passes all understanding, will guard your mind and your hearts in Christ Jesus. So that was a revelational verse to me when I was a young Christian. Like, I didn't grow up in abject poverty or anything like that. I didn't. But we were on the poorer side, and so we didn't always know where food was coming from as a kid, or if we were gonna be eating at night, or what it was gonna be. And my mom always made the best of everything, but it was just, I grew up in that way, and it sort of shaped my thinking to be of a poverty mindset, and so you don't bother asking for things because you're not going to get them anyway. And so like that took that into my spiritual life, and I wouldn't ask God for things. I wouldn't ask big for anything. I would even ask for the little things because you just don't. That's just not right. And then I stumbled on this verse, be anxious for nothing. Wow. Well, we could all use that verse right now because these are kind of anxiety-filled times. There's lots of things to be anxious about, but God says through Paul, don't be anxious about anything. No fretting. And that's not talking about playing guitar. No fretting about anything. But in everything, we're to be giving thanks, and we're to be by prayer and supplication, which supplication is just a more intense word for prayer. It's like asking with humility intensely, like begging almost, with humility coming before the king, asking big, and it says with thanksgiving, and let your requests be known to God. Well, when I discovered that verse was let my requests be known to God, like, doesn't he know about them anyway? Yeah, of course he does. He's the king. He knows about them, but he's waiting for us to ask him. He wants us to ask him. Like, I've heard these of actual, literal human kings, where people would ask the king of something and they would be offended because they asked too small, because are they not a king, right? And so it says in Isaiah 30:18 that the Lord waits for us. He waits for us so he can be gracious to us. Therefore, wait on him. But the Lord waits for us to ask. And so this is a revolutionary kind of verse for me because, well, I can ask him anything then. I really could. Make my request known to God. And so I've learned to ask big. I've really asked him big for things. But the kicker is that this peace of Christ that guards our hearts and minds. Like, when I've made the requests and then leave the requests with him, trusting him, knowing that he knows what's best, and he will answer in his good way and good time, and it will be what's best. For all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose, meaning to shape you into a Christ-like image. All of these things are going to work together. So to trust him in this huge, trust him. Nevertheless, your will be done, Lord, your will be done. Then that peace comes, which passes understanding. People, I don't understand that. No, you don't. Why would you understand it when it says a peace passes understanding? It goes beyond understanding, but a peace comes over and it guards you. It guards your mind and it guards your heart. Now, your mind, we need, in these times, our minds guarded because of all the lies that are coming across the airwaves and across from people's lips, and just lies that are bombarding us all the time, let alone our own self-talk, which can be terrible. But our minds are guarded in Christ Jesus by his peace when we stay our mind on him. And then it says it also guards our heart, which is like being torn around by a whole bunch of emotions that are just wild and crazy. But the peace comes and it guards your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So let me read this again. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests known to God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is awesome. Make your request, release the request, and let it rest with God. Let him answer you as he will. Trust him in it. And then that peace comes. And we need peace in these times. Not only to have it for ourselves, but to give it away. So rest in that verse today in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. And some of 7. Go for it today, folks. It's amazing times we're living in. I hear a phone call.